Immanuel Kant, the philosopher, is someone who's often presented as presenting a compatibilist model of free will, right? Because one way
compatibilist means that you can believe
Phails at philosophy
that determinism isn't true, but indeterminism isn't it some way you...
I mean, classically, there's this sort of sense that
there's incompatibilist model and there's a compatibilist.
Right. A compatibilist model of determinism says, you know, classically, people say that indeterminism and
either or,
right? You can mix them, but I think he rephrases it better. He says, like, now we understand compatibilism to be the compatibility more broadly between theories of determinism and theories of free will. That you have a theory that brings those two and makes them compatible,
which is liberalism, right?
Libertarianism, yeah, and not in the political sense.
Not in the political sense, right. Y'all. Libertarian is not. In
the
philosophical sense, it just means you believe in free will.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing political philosophy, it's the political philosophy.
Libertarian,
but if you're talking about the question of free will, libertarians are people who
believe in free will,
hold the position that free will is a thing.
Yeah.
Right? So compatibilism is just some theory that tries to defend free will without negating determinism.
So you have some blending of these two.
Right. And that's appealing because determinism seems very difficult to get out of, right? For precisely the reasons you talked about.
Yeah.
In terms of the material experience of how people's will seems to function, right? And yeah, that somehow you bring those together. Well, the way Kant is sometimes presented as doing this is to basically say, look, we have two fundamentally different kinds of problems, of analytic problems that we're confronted with, right? One is, we may even think of as a kind of descriptive analytic problem about the world we live in, how it operates, what's going on with it. That's primarily a problem that's about the past, right? What have I experienced? What have others experienced? What have we shared through language?
Mm-hmm.
How do we, and you know, just to be clear, like
tracing influence, is that what you're saying?
I'm taking kind of Kant's intuition here and expanding it out and explaining my own way. But the problem is that, yeah, we have a whole set of problems that are, how do we describe the world? How do we describe the world in an operational way that if whatever I decide to do in the world, I can make predictions about what's going on with the world and what's going on with myself so I can operate in an effective way, right? That's, I mean, I'm putting it in a very pragmatic kind of way, but I think that's a problem we are confronted with as humans. It's like, what is this world? How does it work? And that's one set of problems that require one system of reason to tackle.
I'm going to simplify this, and I'm going to try to simplify this. The ability to have a meta-awareness of influence over time. To say, because I don't know how I'm influenced.
Right.
I seem to be blind to, oh, now I like rap music, and don't necessarily see the breadcrumbs that got me there. Or say, oh, I want to buy a Toyota versus a Honda. I don't necessarily see the breadcrumbs. But if I had all-knowingness or had, you know, some meta bird's eye view of my life, I could trace every decision back,
and I think that's a good
to influence.
Way to think of it, because if you're looking at yourself, even to get into that explanatory frame, you have to project out of yourself into this kind of third-person perspective on your life. These are problems of explanation, right? And when we're confronted with problems of explanation, cause and effect, a deterministic world seems to provide the best broader analytic framework for doing that work well. But then we're confronted with moral problems, right? And those are problems that are problems about choices you make. Should I steal that beautiful steak off the plate of this diner as I'm walking by because it's tasty, right? You know, I'm driven by the desire for steak.
Well, you've been influenced by an awareness of legal structures.
But hold on, don't even go there.
You're talking about the primitive,
right? Just on the most,
me like steak.
Well, and just on the most fundamental level, I have this choice to make.
Yeah. Take steak or not take steak.
How do I make that choice? If you say, well, there's a series of causes that come to tell you, like, that doesn't help me make the choice. I still have to make a choice. right?
Do you though?
Yes, because I'm experiencing that need to make a choice. I can't shut it off.
Because
You
there's
are-
an impulse.
there's an impulse.
But some people would say, then we look at, there's this article that I read about ADHD. I'm ADHD, so I read up on this stuff, and it said that people that have this neurodivergence live a shorter life because this impulse thing that they experience, they can't,
Right.
it can't be controlled. So then you look at the physical brain and you say, like, where
Right,
your impulse
But
level
the very notion
take stake.
that you would have an impaired ability to manage impulse
Yeah.
relies on the notion that at some points you have ability to manage impulse. The very notion that there are people who have greater impulse control than other
less
people
control.
requires the notion of an executive function. And an executive
Yeah.
function requires a notion of free will. There's no way to explain executive function as anything except a very complex set of impulses.
Well, it's like, how
without
are you
a
making
notion-
decisions? But
Right.
I mean, this gets back to that same question of, because you have executive function, I don't see how that means you've got free will, because that executive function is being fed data that came before the discernment process, and it's going to be applied somehow. It's going to update over time based on feedback it gets, but it's going to be hinged on the past.
Sure, absolutely.
And your belief about the nature of the world,
right.
and laws, if you
Absolutely.
want to call them that.
But you still have to make a choice. You still have
But some would say that there's not really a choice to be made.
They're
You're
wrong.
going to come to the same decision over and over and over again because you're going to compute
right. Well, I said
that
they're
way,
wrong.
right?
Right. That's irrelevant to the question. Because
That there is a choice point.
Right.
But what I'm saying is,
no. The question isn't that there's a choice point. The question is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, Phil?
I'm going to.
How do you make that decision?
Good question.
Right. Exactly.
Good question. I don't know.
But because
I always make
Right.
decisions
because
unless I say, like, I don't care. Where do you want to eat
Right.
dinner?
because I mean, well, and exactly,
But that's a decision.
but that I don't know moment, that's the moment that you realize that there's something about you that's trying to go between these points. And
Well,
yeah,
that's a decision. I don't
Right.
know is really like, I've decided not to prioritize this and prioritize something else.
Right.